So, good afternoon, everyone, and it's great to have everybody here today. Unfortunately, we don't have so many people today, and it's not so good to say that when it's being recorded, isn't it? But it's, of course, we had many people could have made today, but because of prior engagements, it's been difficult on a meeting. But we have we have good experts today in the field, very strong people with knowledge and expertise. And I would like to say thank you to Aron and also Hannah for being here today. I know it's not been easy, and with all your busy schedule to commit to this, I'm very grateful. I remember when I approached Aron and I told him about this, he said he was going to do it, and he's here today. So I'm so glad and I'm appreciative of what your commitments towards this. And we've had seminars over the past, a good number of seminars over the last, over a year now. I've been running this. And we have had seminars cutting across, we have coming in to have seminar cutting across different things. But today we have a very apt seminar, no pressure, to Aron and Hannah. And it's so important because of its links to everything that we have been talking about the student perceptions, about in the post-COVID world especially. So today we'll be looking at that. If we want to learn more about the perceptions of videos to support learning in higher education, then this is the place to be. But first, I will be introducing both people here today. And of course, Karen should have been here as well, but Karen extended apologies, like you rightly said, Aron. So, but we have Aron, as you can see, Aron with a very nice, fancy background. He's a blended and online development lead at the University of Portsmouth, Faculty of Law, and his role involves supporting faculty staff with learning design and developing the use of blended online approaches in their teaching. And he leads a team of learning technologists and scoping opportunities for growth in blended online modes of delivery. His research focuses on the use of videos in education and perceptions of academic staff in relation to blended online pedagogies. So it's great to have you here, Aron. And we have Hannah Porter as well. And Hannah is the librarian or the chief librarian of the University of Portsmouth Business School. So it's great to have you here, Hannah. And we should have Karen, and Karen is the reader in accounting and accountability. And she's an enthusiastic researcher with PhD and master's degree in research methods. But unfortunately, she's not here today. But of course, beyond the introduction, we are here to discuss about perception of videos. We already know about how video resources are so important, but how do students perceive the use of videos in supporting learning? When we look at what people, most time people tend to put off their videos or put on their cameras, how do we relate with it? So we have two people that have done so much on this, and they will be discussing their perception of the use and value of video resources on business school courses between 2020 and 2022. So the floor is yours, and thanks very much for coming again.
Thank you very much, Christian. Thank you so much for inviting us along. And I'll just, hopefully you guys can see the slides there. Hannah, do let me know if you can't.
I'm up for that, so we have more people joining, so.
Fantastic, brilliant. So yeah, Christian and I met last year at the British Academy of Management MKE conference, and he was very charming and asked us to come along, and we're really delighted to be here. And I'm joined by Hannah, my colleague as well, so we were part of the same research project. Now, Hannah and I, we must confess, we are quite early career academics in terms of research, and this is quite a practitioner-focused research project that we've been involved in. And what we were hoping to do was to explain what we've done, talk about some of our findings, and maybe hear your thoughts as well, because we think it's quite a universal theme. Everyone involved in HE has had to touch videos at some point, whether they like it or not. So we're really keen to hear your thoughts. And the project that we are going to be talking about is titled Investigating Student Perceptions of Videos to Support Their Learning in Higher Education. So yeah, Hannah, could you tell us a little bit about who was involved in the project? Would that be okay?
Yeah, so our project team, basically, we're drawn from across the business school, both academic and professional services. So I'm the faculty librarian for business. So I am on an academic contract and I'm an academic, but I also sit within professional services. And then we had Aron as well as three quite research intense accounting lecturers. So Karen, Christina and Geraldine are accounting lecturers, are researchers, and they were part of the group with us. Then we also had a colleague called Andy, who looks after Moodle for our degree apprenticeships. And we had Professor Valerie Anderson, and she is a world-renowned professor and does a lot of research, and it's guided and steered our project. So what was really good about the project team was that we had experience from across the faculty in different things. So as a faculty librarian, I often create videos for students to watch about how to do particular tasks or use particular resources. I go into a lot of courses and I see a lot of different teaching methods and a lot of different approaches to online blended and face-to-face learning. So that, combined with our expertise for Moodle and videos from Aron and Andrew, and then with our research team as well, meant we were a really good team to come together with lots of different experience. It was especially good for somebody like me, as Aron said, an early researcher, to have the experience working with people who have done this a lot, to hear from them what works best. So basically, Karen, Geraldine and Christina were our they put together our research proposal, looked through the ethics form, helped us with all that side of things. And reason why we were able to do this, if you could just hop onto the next slide, Aron. Within our business school, we've had a little bit of a restructure recently, and we have 4 areas within the business school. So there's the law school, there's accounting, economics and finance, there's operations, people and systems, and there's strategy, marketing and innovation. So those are our 4 schools. Across those schools, we have about 6,000 now, it's gone up a little bit, about 6,000 undergraduate and postgraduate students. An increasing number of international postgraduate students have come in the last couple of years as well. But what happened with our faculty is Valerie, Professor Valerie Anderson, she set up BESIG, which is the Business Education Special Interest Group. And the idea of BESIG in the faculty is that interested individuals come together to make a little subgroup, and all of those subgroups have to have some kind of defined output. So our project group was part of the digital education subgroup, and our proposed output was that we were going to do some research into videos in a journal article and some conference papers. But other groups in the faculty have done checklists or run events or other things, and it's a really nice way of getting academics and professional services staff to work together. It's all voluntary, which means people are generally interested in the projects that they're doing, and we get some output for the faculty at the end of the day. So I've been really pleased to be involved in BESIG as part of that faculty. So for our digital education group, Aron is our group leader for this area. We really wanted to look at the use of lecture created videos, because as an institution, we switched to Panopto in the summer of 2020, obviously COVID-19 and everything. I know some institutions had already gone with something like Panopto previously, but we picked it up in summer 2020, and the university started to develop its content capture policy and other things around the use of video. During the pandemic, a lot of lecturers and myself, we all sort of jumped on board, made as many videos as we could, explaining all sorts of things, whacked them all up online, but there wasn't, it was, we needed a learning experience behind this. Not all the videos were the best quality, and we weren't really sure how and why students were engaging with these videos. Sometimes we would create a video and it didn't get as many views as we thought it might have done. So we were keen to sort of explore, why were students engaging with certain types of video? What was it about those videos that made them engaging? Why were they using them, and why weren't they using them? So we're really keen to get that student viewpoint around how they reacted with this lecturer created content. So that's the context. If you want to talk about the background a bit, Aron.
Yeah, sure. I think you've summed it up really nicely there, Hannah. So like a lot of schools across the country, we suddenly had to produce a lot of video, and it was it suddenly became kind of ubiquitous, didn't it, Hannah? There was a requirement for it to be used on every course. Now, like UWS, we have accounting courses, generalist business, we've got foundation degrees, and international business and law courses as well, and postgraduate business courses too. And there was quite a lot of variation in terms of how videos were used across these courses. And it was our colleague Andy, wasn't it, Andy, who actually said he would be interested to know like how students are using these videos and what works and what doesn't. I don't know how it was at UWS, but there's sort of sometimes seems to be generally accepted practice about what makes a good video, or what, what you should do in your learning and teaching practice, what's good, good practice and seen as being the right way to do things. And as the pandemic progressed, I think there was probably increasing uncertainty about perhaps what that meant, about whether students were using these in the way that we thought. And as Hannah said, we brought in this content management, content capture system. You guys may have something similar, which suddenly allowed us to retain and draw data off about a lot of this material that's been produced. So it seemed like a really good opportunity for us to look into this. And Hannah's been making videos for a long time in her capacity as a faculty librarian as well. And I've been trying to promote the use of videos. And prior to the pandemic, what we found was that not that many people were using them. Sometimes they do what we're doing now, a bit of sort of screen capture on a computer. Occasionally they'd make sort of flagship videos for big projects, but for the most part, there wasn't a great deal of video content being produced. But then suddenly it skyrocketed, obviously, when COVID hit. So that's what that was kind of the context for us. And in terms of the literature around that, you may already be familiar with this, but what we found at the time was that there was quite a bit of literature on multimedia use in higher education. There was a lot of information out there in the literature about things from perhaps 10 or 15 years ago. Often it focused on things like the idea of cognitive load, or the idea of how students and users can process information. For example, the use of video as well as audio, or the use of animations and cartoons, or features like the presence of an instructor in a video and how students responded to that. But actually, there wasn't a great deal of research in contemporary HE, we found at the time. And there wasn't a great deal of research at a large scale outside of things like, there were things like MOOCs, if you may have come across those, so massive online open courses. Those were kind of, there were studies about how students engage with videos in that context. But yeah, we found there was a bit of a gap there. But despite that, everyone was using video, and it became a big part of all of our teaching. And what we did find in our literature review and in our search was that there was a big acceptance that video was really important. It's definitely needs to be used, and it's got real benefits. And there was talk, as you can see on the screen there, about how it enhanced accessibility to learning, choice and flexibility around how students wanted to engage with their studies. It supposedly as well, for this degree of flexibility and improved grade outcomes as well. And what seemed to come across in the literature was that it was there to help provide a coherent and consistent learning experience as well. And this was something Hannah and I think, were quite interested in, because we saw across the entirety of our course profile, it wasn't always used consistently, and there are different ways videos were sort of implemented in teaching. So that was quite interesting. And there's also another key thing we noticed was that the term engagement got used a lot. But as I'm sure you folks know as well, student engagement is it's a multifaceted concept. It's kind of enigmatic, as I think it says in literature as well. And it's quite difficult to nail down what that means, really. So in terms of the actual student engagement with videos as a feature of their learning, it really depends on how the authors in question choose to interpret that term, I think. Sometimes, a click on a video means that the student is engaged with it, but our question would be, to what extent does that really indicate sort of engagement? And certainly what we saw from the literature was that simply viewing educational videos doesn't guarantee that students are going to achieve learning outcomes necessarily. Certainly contemporary large-scale studies in the UK higher education environment don't seem to sort of reflect that. So what we tried to do was to try and break it down. So there's an increasing sort of view of the idea of student engagement, or engagement, as having a number of different domains within it. And we focused on the idea of cognitive, affective, and behavioural engagement. And these are kind of each on a spectrum, really. And the view is that they're all really important to establish engagement with video in this context. And Bedenley and his colleagues, I think, were particularly had a particularly seminal piece of work in this area, and we found this really useful. So fundamentally, behavioural engagement means whether or not you click on a video, whether or not you look at it. And what we found was that you can measure that. You can see how many students are clicking on a video or watching it. So that's quite straightforward. Cognitive engagement is a bit more about how a student or a learner will engage on a light or deep level with the material that's presented in video. So as you can see, it's about the mental effort and the thinking strategies involved. Now that's much harder to measure, whether or not a student is engaging cognitively with a video or not. And then beyond that, there's the affective element of engagement, which is about how they feel, the emotional engagement with a video. So whether they're angry with it or frustrated or bored or interested. And again, that's tremendously challenging to measure, as noted in the literature here. So what we wanted to find out was how students feel about these videos, particularly because, again, this was kind of 2 years ago that we started this. I don't know about you folks, but we've noticed that the way students and staff engage with videos even now has changed since 2 years ago. Perhaps there was a novelty element for a lot of staff or students. Now, perhaps, you know, it's pretty standard. Everyone uses videos. Maybe people feel differently about it. So we wanted to explore how students feel about that, how they use it in their studies, what works for them, and what they sort of like from it. So that was kind of our context, really. And Hannah, you okay, Hannah, to talk a little bit now about what that translated as in terms of our research questions and our objectives?
Yes, so we ended up with the research question: to what extent and how do students engage with tutor-generated video resources provided as part of their course? So obviously we wanted to, we were looking at the tutor-generated videos. We have, video repositories where you can sort of buy in and link up videos from YouTube and from other places. But we really wanted to think about the tutor-generated videos, the ones that we created, and how did students get on with using them on their course. So this then was broken down into the different behavioural types that Aron's talked about. So we talked about behavioural engagement, cognitive engagement, and affective engagement. And we just wanted to get a feel from those students how they reacted to the videos they were being asked to watch, how they watched them, where they watched them, what did they do with the information, and really get a feel for how they were interacting with these tutor-generated videos.
Thanks, Hannah. Yeah, and our colleague Karen is she's the research methods expert, to be honest, but unfortunately Karen isn't with us. So we'll give you a bit of a brief summary, but what we fundamentally did was we focused in on the students within our business school. So as like you folks, you've got law and business, but we thought we'd stick with the business school students because it was a controllable population. And we wanted to get a cross-section. We wanted to talk to some undergrads, some postgrads, some distance learning students, some foundation degree students. And what we did was we sought out secondary and primary data. And we did this by running a series of student focus groups. And we did some of those were all face-to-face. No, they weren't all face-to-face, were they, Hannah? Some were face-to-face.
They were all online.
They all ended up, yes, they were supposed to be face-to-face, but ended up being online. And then we did what we referred to as a data grab, which Hannah will discuss in a second. And then we also used the institutional content management system, Panopto, to draw off the quantitative data, which provided us with some interesting stats, which I'll mention in a minute, to give us an idea about how students were engaging with it and using the videos. And it was a piece of insider research. We used this mixed methods approach. What we wanted to do was use the stats from the VLE and from Panopto to work out which kind of videos were most popular. So whether there was anything to do with their duration, whether how they were being used, the features of them, and the ways in which students engage with those. And then also the primary data, the qualitative data enabled us to do a thematic analysis of the students' experiences and of the way that they felt about using these videos. So their likes and dislikes and what they felt was the value in terms of their learning from these videos. So that was kind of a brief overview. And then what we did, we coded that up. And we presented that, and we've tried to write it up into a paper. This was quite a while ago, wasn't it, Hannah? So we're doing that thing where we've kind of revisited the stuff that we did to try and remember what it was we did as well. But yeah, what we found was, we think, quite interesting. So Hannah, can you talk a little bit about the data grab that we did?
Yeah, so initially we started with focus groups, and I, as a fairly new researcher, was ever so keen. I thought we'd get loads of responses. I was planning on doing 5 to 8 focus groups with 10 to 15 people. You know, it's going to be great. We were offering Amazon vouchers as an incentive. We didn't get the uptake that we were hoping for, even though there was an incentive and it was, you know, emailed out to students by their lecturers, staff, and other things. So we did do some focus groups, and they were really informative, but they were small and they were quite niche. So we wanted to make sure we could get some other data as well. So it was proposed that we did this kind of data grab, which isn't something that I've done before, but actually it was really good. And what we did was we went into a class face-to-face of our degree apprenticeships. Now, I don't know if it's the same for you, but here at Portsmouth, the degree apprenticeships, they come from quite a wide range of backgrounds and ages. Some are mature learners, some are just out of, just out of college. And they're always keen to give their opinion, possibly more so than some of our other student cohorts. So you know, if you go and speak to the degree apprenticeships, that they are going to tell you good and bad right away. And my colleague Andy and I, we work with the degree apprenticeships in our different roles already, so they knew us. So whilst we're not their academics, they do know us. So I think they felt safe to, to give their viewpoints. So we went into the lecture, basically the last 10 minutes, and we put up a Padlet. Again, going back a few years, Padlet, sort of online notice boards. This was all very exciting at the time. It's all become so well used now. But we set up a Padlet and we allowed students to go on and just add their comments. What did they think? So they could be totally anonymous if they wanted. So they went on and added some comments, and then we had a discussion with them. And they really got quite involved, and we were able to I was able to add clarifying points onto the Padlet board, because as they were talking, they didn't want to type on the Padlet board. So we were able to add in comments for them and get them to explain what they wanted to say about videos. So just 10 minutes gave us a real insight into how these students use the videos. And we covered ourselves by having our research participant information, our ethics form, all of that was linked to on the Padlet form, and we informed the students what we were doing beforehand. So we covered all the ethical side. But yes, in just 10 minutes, we got so much data, as opposed to the hours that we'd spent doing the focus groups with those small sort of niche groups of students. So yeah, it was a really interesting approach, and something I think I'd be happy to try again.
And I think to back that up, Hannah, as well, we got some really interesting qualitative comments from the focus groups as well about things that corroborated or called into question some of the data we found.
Yeah.
But we definitely found it was quite challenging, didn't we, to get student views on this subject, even though it's kind of a ubiquitous thing. But yeah, thanks very much, Hannah. So that was a data grab, and then what we've also did was, and please forgive the data on this slide, it's not the most attractive. What we did was we drew off the data from the VLE, and I'm just going to see if I can let's do a tiny little, is that going to work? Yeah, yes, there we go, cool. So first of all, what we did was we drew off the overall headline data from Panopto to see how students were engaging with our videos and the kind of videos we had. And as you can see here, there's two big sort of peaks throughout the duration of time. So it was it was March 2020, I think, Hannah, wasn't it? Right through to pretty much March 2022 that we looked at the data. And you can see that the graph there pretty much shows the academic year running along. So from March 2020 through to March 2021, and then there's a break over the summer, and then starts again. Oh, I apologize. Sorry, from September, not March. I'm thinking the wrong way around. So it's the academic year each time. And the first one is the year the pandemic hit, and the second one is the year after. So the quantity of videos produced and the quantity of videos engaged with was that bit more significant in the first year. Not as much in the second year. So we really attribute this largely to the reuse of video content that was generated by staff in the second year. They reused it, and there was a bit more on-campus teaching later on in the year and different modes of engagement during that year as well. So what we did was we went through the most popular videos in our faculty, and what we did is we divided it by our subject area. So as Hannah said earlier, and as you guys may have got different schools, we divided it by those subjects. And what we found was that about 90% of the most popular videos they're not recordings of lectures, they are bespoke videos. So the most popular ones are ones that were created for a particular purpose. Generally, they had features like having clear editing, so they had a neat start and an end, and they had clear audio that you could hear. The vast majority of them, about 83%, were narrated slides. So what we're doing now, and what I'm sure many of you are familiar with. But about 38% of the top videos also included the academics webcam as well. So there was the instructor presence there, which seems to match what the literature says. It says that users like visuals and users like instructor presence to be part of it. And what we would say as well is a lot of them involved an academic trying to be quite engaging about the subject. Again, the literature seems to suggest that if you're interested in the topic, people are going to be a bit more interested in watching your video. Now, what we did was we categorized the videos by departments, by their sort of school discipline, and we found that videos dealing with assessment preparation were usually in the top 3 videos for each category. And other really popular ones were module introduction videos, or ones with specific theories or topics in their title. So there was some form of signaling, which we'll talk about in a bit, to identify what it was that these videos contained. So in total, I think there were 528,000 unique viewing sessions, as it's referred to. So that's 528,000 times that a student looked at a video during the period. And overall, the average viewing duration, regardless of the length of the video, was 7 minutes. So again, the literature talks about how short videos are really important. And again, that seems to match real life experience. What I would say is students have the option to end video whenever they want in this context. So actually, in many ways, it's kind of a self-selecting thing. What we've established is that students can make videos short by stopping them when they want to. There is a bit of a limitation, unfortunately, with our system in that we couldn't tell the pace of playback at which students engage with videos. We did talk to them in focus groups, and I chatted to them about this a little bit. We tried to get some feedback, but unfortunately, we can't tell who's been watching a video at 2 times speed or that kind of thing. We also couldn't tell who's using captions underneath. But again, we got some feedback on that from students. But yeah, overall, what we'd say is the most popular videos are the ones that seem to have been created for a purpose. And generally speaking, they are short. And what I would say is, finally, on this subject, now my unpleasant table here, which I'm highlighting again, kind of codes out about 2,800 videos which had more than 50 views during this period. So I've excluded any ones that were not viewed as much. But what we're sort of trying to show here is that the longer a video gets, as it goes from 5 minutes up to 60 or more minutes, the average percentage of that video viewed drops. So when the video is really short, under 5 minutes, about 70% of that video length was watched on average. But when it's an hour long or more, it drops right down to less than 30%. So really, there is a clear relationship across the board here between the longer it gets, the less people watch. Whether that is a question of it being self-selecting and students just dipping out when they get bored. There's another thing which I don't know if you guys have, is that Panopto in our institution allows for a degree of intelligent sort of searching through the content. So you can click on the slide that you want to look at and it will skip you forward to that bit. So there's a degree of selectivity about which elements of the video students would look at, whereas perhaps in years gone by, you'd have to look at the entire video and scrub your way through it manually to see what was going on. Yeah, that was quite an interesting finding for us. So yeah, I've wound on about findings in that. So Hannah, could you, oh, look at that. I've left the annotations on the screen. Sorry.
Oh, that looks quite strange.
Let's get rid of those. Come on, they're all drawings. There we go. Hannah, are you okay to talk a little bit about the themes we found from the focus groups? Thank you.
Yeah, so obviously we drew information both from the quantitative and the qualitative analysis. But what was really interesting when talking to students in the focus groups was some of the variety that we got. So we did have, some students saying that they were watching longer videos, and some saying they didn't watch longer videos at all, and some saying they hated having the presenter view, and some saying they loved it. So it was very interesting how not one size fitted all at all. There were quite a lot of disparity in what the students wanted. But the themes that we could draw together, basically, as Aron was saying, it seems short. That's the first thing that students would say about videos. They need to be short. That was the absolutely key thing, that they want them to be short and chunked up. So obviously, if we've got to create a longer video, it should be in short chunks rather than one big video. The autonomy, the learner control, I found this aspect really interesting. And I think that's why it's a shame we can't get those more technical stats from our system. But in terms of the focus groups, talking to students about how they used our system. So were they watching the videos on 2 times speed? And some students said, like me, they do that automatically. I mean, I never watch a video on standard speed. I'm always watching it 2 times. But then other students didn't like that. They found that difficult. Not many students said that they slowed videos down. They said it was rare that they needed to do that, but a lot of them did watch them sped up. They found that easier. And I think the thing about the subtitles was really fascinating, because I hadn't appreciated really until I did the focus groups how important those subtitles were, not just because they're captioning what the person's saying, but the students were using them for all sorts of reasons. So they might have been in a public space where they were listening in headphones and didn't want to have the audio up, so they would use the transcription instead. They would use the subtitles and the transcription to find key places in the in the video, key things that the lecturer had said that they wanted to come back to. So they were searching the transcripts to jump to exact places that they wanted to be. Some of our international students said they found the transcription could be helpful when they hadn't understood something. Obviously, with the machine translation, you have to be a little bit careful, but one of our students said that it was good enough that it helped their understanding when they were trying to rewatch these videos. The other thing that is useful, which also comes a little bit under the learner control, is the whole how the videos are presented. And again, this was so interesting to get the feedback from students and what they liked and they didn't like. The advantage of a tool like Panopto is that if the students are given a link to it, they can choose the view. So they can, depending on how the lecturer set it up, they can have it as split screen, they can have the presenter on camera or not, and they can view it as they wish. And that seems to be very sensible because of the disparity of views we found from students about whether they did or didn't want to have the lecturer on screen or not. In general, they found if it was a shorter video, then just doing a voiceover with slides was fine. You know, that was absolutely acceptable if it was a short video. But some learners really liked the split screen. They liked being able to feel they were interacting with the lecturer, that made it feel, you know, more like they were in the classroom. So quite interesting different views on how those videos should be presented and whether students liked seeing the presenter's face or whether that helped their learner engagement or not. The other things we drew from the focus groups was all about why and when and how the students were actually watching the videos. I find this really quite an interesting area because I wanted to ask them when, you know, when are you actually watching the videos? Is there a set pattern? And a lot of students watched them right at the beginning and right at the end of the course. You know, they were aiding revision, or they were looking at them to go back to follow up after a lecture, something they hadn't understood. But I did have a few students who said they had dedicated study time for watching the videos. You know, the lecturer had said they needed to watch this video before their seminar or their lecture, and they spent time that day before going through the video. So that was pleasing. Not everybody, but, you know, it's a good thing to be doing. And they were using them to catch up, to aid their understanding, to look for short things that they needed to know. And as Aron said, assessments, you know, really key and important video messages. Those were the ones that they wanted to engage with. And they were mainly looking at them, interestingly, on their computer and their laptop. So they were using them on mobiles, but that was much more felt to be when they were short on time or when they were out and about and doing something in a rush. The preference was for doing it on the laptop or the computer where they could actually actively engage with the content a little bit more. So I thought that was quite interesting. So from these themes, Karen generated some top tips for practice. Could you just get that slide up for me, Aron? Thank you. So these were Karen's top tips. So these, just to summarize, some of it is quite common sense. You would have already thought before we did the research, but it's just really interesting to hear that feedback from the students. So the main things are definitely short. So as I said, there were different students said different things about length of video, but in the main, short was absolutely preferred and chunked up if it needs to be. The clear sound, as Aron said, that is really, really important. Students got so frustrated when the sound was off, especially if the captions weren't right. So that is something I think initially during the pandemic, we all jumped on and recorded our videos, you know, and there's one of me sounding like, you know, with my, so getting that sound quality is actually really quite important to students. They wanted them to look, you know, they don't have to be amazingly like professional in the sense of television or film or that, but they wanted them to be professionally presented. You know, they didn't want crackly sound and lectures that they couldn't hear. The other thing is about the relevancy. Why are they being asked to watch this? What is in this that is important to them? Is it just background extra that they don't have to watch? Is it absolutely core? So making it clear to the students, why are they having to watch this and why is it relevant to what they're doing? Engagement, this is where the students were saying how much they valued the lecturer being engaged on the video. So they talked about sometimes lecturers using a bit of humor or having a particularly good and interesting tone of voice, some energy for the subject matter, maybe bringing in some real life stories or examples. So just that kind of engaging content, basically, that the students could interact with and could feel, you know, they were part of more than just a voiceover on slides. Not too much information. Now, as a librarian, this is one of my worst traits. You can ask any librarian, we want to give the students all the information all the time, but it's absolutely crucial that the videos are short and tight and don't have excess information in. They have to have short information that the students can engage with straight away. And as we've said, chunked was definitely preferable. So rather than a long video, short chunked up videos, that was what they wanted. The final message, I think, and the thing that is really interesting, is all of our students said that they wanted the videos to be used as well as face-to-face. So they were not wanting these videos to be replacements. They wanted them to go back to look at again, to aid their revision, but they wanted the face-to-face as well. There was no sort of oh, actually just the video will do. It was very much stated that they should be used alongside face-to-face teaching.
Thanks, Hannah. Just realised we've got 2 5s and no 7 on that list. There we go. Yeah, and on that subject, I think one thing we did pick out from the focus groups, correct me if I'm wrong, Hannah, was I don't know if you folks at UWS have a content capture policy or a strategy whereby you have to record sessions. We have a content capture policy, but it doesn't say that a video recording must be created of classroom sessions. And what we did find was that where academics had, for example, filmed a regular classroom session and then just plopped that video online, the feeling from students was that that was not a positive thing, because they felt like it wasn't really recorded for them. They weren't in the room, they couldn't really hear what was going on, and all that sort of stuff. So that was where the bespoke video, and a lot of our guidance over the pandemic period was about, create a 10-minute summary rather than do a full hour recording. So that's where the chunking and all those kind of things come into it. And this appears to be what matches the literature recommendations as well. And all those kind of points that Karen's put on this little map, they map against kind of seminal literature that's come out from Mayer and Gu, Kim and Rubin and other people who've talked about these kind of things. They're all quite fundamental things. It's easier said than done, but I think what was reassuring was that it did seem that students wanted the things that were there in the literature as being recommended. Yeah, so with that practical stuff, we kind of tried to tie it together to work out what it really meant for us. And hopefully the research we've done, although it's fairly small scale and it is limited inherently, it to some extent extends this emerging evidence base a little bit in the area of video as a feature of our pedagogy in higher education. So that's in general, but then specifically what we've tried to do is to see how that relates to the behavioural, affective and cognitive domains of student engagement. And what we've tried to do is pick it apart. So from a behavioural perspective, elements of that include the way in which students like to engage with practically, the clicking, the choice of which features they use. And there is literature again on how students like to watch things sped up or how to have fundamentally, I think, an element of control over the way they engage with those videos. In the affective domain, there's a lot discussed about technological affordances, so the features of a technology tool that allow students to do something. But yeah, some of the comments we got back from that, as Valerie's put on there, was seeing their faces weird. That was one comment from a student. So some like it, some don't. So I suppose that emotional engagement, that sense of how students feel about the video is, it does depend and it varies from student to student. And then cognitive engagement as well. So Mayer has done a lot of research into this, but the idea of the extent to which deep learning could potentially take place, or how easy students find to engage critically on a level with video material, depending on the features of it that kind of come out. What we did find was that this perhaps challenges what Mayer's done in terms of the area of cognitive load theory. So the idea that more, his arguments are that you shouldn't overload stuff and you should either have audio or video. And views on this have changed over time. I think perhaps there's an argument for the fact that the way students engage with video has changed a bit. And so participation in the use of video means that, perhaps expectations have changed. I think there's questions there about the extent to which our behavior is controlled by the platforms we have available to us. So the way we engage with video is determined by the fact that YouTube is the ubiquitous channel through which videos get watched, so you know where to click and you know what to do, that kind of thing. And so those kind of platforms determine the engagement patterns we have. Yeah, and this kind of led us to just finally this idea of signaling theory, which has come across in management education in the last 10 or 15 years or so, and it's often been used to talk about employability, but it's not really been used to talk about student engagement very much. But our colleague Valerie led on this, and she noticed that it relates to this idea of information asymmetry between the provider and the receiver, and the idea that students react to imperfect information. So, for example, students on a mega module on an undergraduate course, so if we've got a big module and they've all got to look at this lecture recording, if it's called Lecture 1, the titling of a video or the information card at the start may influence a student's perception of what it's going to be. Whereas, as Hannah was saying, often bespoke videos that have been created for a purpose or are shorter, if there's clear messaging and signaling there, it has more of an implication and more of an impact on the way students might engage with that video. So there are implications there which we're trying to draw out, and we're hoping to publish based on that. But we were really ultimately interested in what you folks have found as well from your experience at UWS. We're wondering, did the experiences match your own? Do people still use videos a lot? Do students like it, or are you picking up the view that actually students aren't so keen on the use of videos? So we're really interested to come along today and find out a bit about that as well. That pretty much sums up most of what we've been doing, and we're really grateful for your time. So thank you. And yeah, if anyone's got any questions or anything angry they'd like to say, feel free to say. We're here to listen. But yeah, thank you, Christian, and thank you, folks, for listening.
Thank you so much, Aron and Hannah. I think it was a fabulous presentation. It was very engaging, the same way videos should be engaging. The presentation was very engaging. I learned a lot. It's unfortunate that we don't have so many people here, but I'm happy that we have this recorded, because of one of the people that joined said, I think it was Kali, and he was saying that this is very interesting and he hopes that we can get the records. So it's great. Of course, with what you've said, is one of the things about it from the beginning is that the research is apt, and it was great to see the findings. I think one of the things that struck me was the 6, I think like 7 findings that you came up with. Videos should be short, videos should be clear, it should be relevant, it should be engaging. And you know, most of the time, like Hannah, you said, as a librarian, you want to provide so much information overload, but the students don't want it. So it's great that we now know that students don't want over 15 minutes videos. Somehow, I think it gets them tired. And like Aron, you said, for UWS, we also don't, it's not compulsory that we record our lectures while we're doing it. So you're open to do that. Some people do that while they're having their lectures, even on face-to-face, they try to record it. But when you now do that and upload it, it's very difficult for the student to engage on a 2-hour lecture, 1-hour lecture. So when you do those bespoke videos, like you rightly pointed out, they could be shorter, but still at least you're supporting the students. I do a lot of bespoke videos in that sense, and it helps. Sometimes I think the difficulty with that is for us as academics, we're just sitting down on the screen, trying to be engaging. You're not talking to anybody. So it's difficult for the academic to do a bespoke video when you know that there is no audience. So I think it's more difficult to be engaging in that sense. But I think it's a skill and expertise that academics need to learn, because from what you've said, from your findings, it's key that the students want bespoke videos, somebody that's engaging, a clear sound, clearly. So that's another institutional barrier. So do you have the resource or the facility, the computers to provide that? Are you doing it in your house where the signal might not be very good? So all those things come to play. And for me, one of the things that I really enjoy from what you've said is, because when this started, a lot of people felt it was a replacement for the face-to-face delivery. But from your findings, it's very clear that it should be more of an accompaniment, so something that should support it rather than replace it. So it's great that is what your students say. And I don't think it's going to be different if we do these findings in Scotland. So maybe that's one of the things that you might consider going beyond your university and seeing, okay, is it just, are Portsmouth students different from other students, or is it something that should go beyond? But it's great. I think for me, it's more of the feedback. I enjoyed it, and I hope and I'm sure that people did. But what I will do before I even ask 1 or 2 questions, I want any questions from Hilary or Mohammed, anything you want to ask?
Yeah, just a quick question. As I say, I am the person hanging on to the people internet today. Did you take into account accessibility? My reason for asking is I've done a fair bit of work with this in my previous role with the Open University. So we actually had groups of students who are examining courses and videos from an accessibility perspective. So I just wondered if you'd address those issues.
Yeah, I think that is really important, Hilary, and I'm more for making everything accessible. I think that's really important, that the more we do with accessibility, the better for all. I think with our Panopto system, it does have some accessibility built in. We've got the machine generated captions as well. There were some things when there were only small mentions, but in the focus group, sometimes students would talk about the slides, would talk about colors, or if the slides were too much text or that side of things. It wasn't generally picked up upon that there were accessibility difficulties. There were some access difficulties. That is more to do with logons off campus and that kind of thing, and the lecturer sometimes not understanding which link to use to embed the video. So there were some things about that. Aaron, have you got any more information about Panopto itself and the accessibility within that platform?
Yeah, it's a good question, Hannah, and a really good point, Hilary. One thing we did come across was, and I think it's understandably frustrating for very busy academics who are trying to produce material, when you might produce a screen capture of your slides and then you pop it on Panopto and it automatically generates your captions for you, and you put it on a virtual learning environment, Moodle, and then some students will get in touch and say, well, I can't read the slides, I need the slides as well. And then the academics say, oh, well, we made a decision just to put the videos on there and not the slides because we wanted to keep our Moodle sites clutter-free and that kind of thing. But actually, the video's there, but from an accessibility perspective, yeah, it's also helpful to have the PowerPoint slides for a screen reader to go through as well. So I do appreciate, as you said, Hilary, I'm sure you've done a lot of work on this, and it's really important, but it's also it's tricky, isn't it? So we found that you can include PowerPoint slides within a Panopto recording, but they're only visible and easily accessible for students in certain contexts, depending on how the academic has used the video and how they've embedded it on their sites. So that is tricky. And related to that, one of the most exciting features of my job is that I go through periodically and search out any videos on our virtual learning environment that haven't been uploaded using Panopto, because it means that they won't have captions. Because we want to make sure we get rid of those and replace them with caption versions. So yeah, it's definitely one of those kind of painting the fourth bridge jobs. I think it's always, is that the right bridge? Anyway, yeah, where it's never ends. Every time you finish, there's always more stuff that comes on. So yeah, what's your experience with it, Hilary? Have you kind of have you found that it works well for you, or is it a bit of a barrier as well?
The accessibility issue. Well, I'm not long with UWS actually. I've only been there for a couple of months, but my previous role, I was strategic academic lead for the Open University for short course development. And what I found, I produced 25 short courses. We used obviously video, audio, very much bespoke videos made in the studio, dramas, role plays and things. We used the OU's accessibility guides, which are quite strict in terms of font and letter. But I actually had the opportunity to be part of a group which a colleague had set up, and she actually managed to get some funding for a range of students with a variety of different types of disabilities to go through the courses before they were released and actually highlight some issues with them that they found. And it was really interesting because, we literally thought we'd done everything. And then you find out that there's some issues, there's a couple of colors, maybe it's the text. Maybe in one case, it was an accident recreation. So not an accident, a recreation on how people would deal with an accident. And that brought out some mental health difficulties and some stress with people. Now, from my perspective, I was thinking, well, it wasn't a real accident. But we learned a lot from it. That's I was amazed at how much we got from that.
That's really interesting, Hilary. Did you have were there any video specific accessibility issues that came up? I'm quite keen to know. Were there anything the students said about accessing them or things? Not
about the technical side of accessing videos, because all our videos were embedded within the course. So I was never allowed actually to link out. Now, we did on occasion link out to YouTube if it wasn't part of an assessment, but we also paid for that so that we didn't end up with all the ads, because that brought out some issues with students. The rest of them I made bespoke with a company called Hamlet Films. And together we made sure that we actually had got all sorts of accessibility and EDI included in them. But even with all that, we had, a few issues came up at the very end when we were working with this wide range of students going through everything. So
that's really, really interesting. Thank you very much, Hilary. I think Hannah and I are nodding along thinking it's fantastic that you guys did that and work with those students, because again, from our perspective, where we're often trying to work with or influence academics, it's everyone is time poor and they've got a lot of priorities, actually hearing the student voice on perspectives on learning materials is really invaluable, because as you say, even very well meaning, and you hope you've ticked everything off, but a unique learning difference or disability could bring a whole different perspective onto your learning materials. And yeah, we're using our university branded slides. I believe it was noted shortly after they were launched that they don't have the best color contrast as well. So there's little things like this, but they can mean a great deal to individual learners. So you're absolutely right. Thanks.
I think just one point I'd add is, as academics, we're generally employed because we've got a certain skill set and we obviously have knowledge on our subject. And now, when we're launching videos in this way, or when I was making videos like this, that was quite out of my skill set when I was thinking, well, what do I need to do for a student who's got ADHD, for example? What do I need to do for a student who's got certain sight difficulties or hearing difficulties? And the answer was, I just simply didn't know. I mean, clearly we're working with experts on that, but you find yourself really stretched and you think, am I actually doing a good enough job here? Because I actually don't know that. And that's, I think, working with that group of students going through everything who are quite candid and said, I've got this kind of issue and I've looked at it from my perspective and this is what I found, tremendously helpful, really.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, I think that's something we'd be interested to do as well. Actually, just get some, student viewpoints from those with different disabilities, because I think that, as you say, the more accessible it is, to everybody. So it's really important that we build this in. So yeah, as Aron says, we do have a periodic check that we haven't got inaccessible materials, but it would be good if accessibility was thought of every time we're creating anything. I think you're correct.
But thanks, it's a fantastic presentation. It's absolutely fascinating.
And thanks Aron, and thanks Hannah. I think thanks Hilary for that. Of course, Hilary has so much expertise from the Open University, and of course we know the Open University is already built for distance learning. But we in UWS here, we try to do the same. We have people just like you that their role is to support us with online videos and all that. So sometimes as an academic, you go on your Zoom or your Teams and you produce those kind of videos and you're able to upload them on Moodle. So we try to do that. I think we are able to use the YouTube if you want, but I think there is no ban on using YouTube at the moment. I think the preference really is to go on, do it on Zoom or Teams, then upload it straight on Moodle, or we use Moodle, or we'll use Aula. That's what we use at the moment, and so students are able to access it. And now depends on how good the background is, the computers and all that, but we try to do the same. But it's great. Your findings, what I like about it, again, is the fact that you have, of course, as a researcher, the fact that you're able to contribute to the agenda, your contribution. So that's great. The cognitive part, the affective part, and all that. And are you thinking of getting this published? Is it something that is in the cards? Is it out there yet? So is it something that you guys are thinking about?
Yeah, so we've submitted the draft of the paper to an accounting-specific journal, and because largely the students that we approached ended up being a lot of them being in accountancy. So and we're waiting to hear back from that. But it is a topic that's changing all the time, which is quite interesting, even though there are similar themes there. So, yeah.
Well, I'm sure 100%. The way I look at it, I was thinking of Amli. Amli would love this. So Amli is a 4-star management education journal, so that would be good. But since you've submitted to the accounting journal, of course, since the context was more of accounting students, so that would also appeal to them. But either way, it's something that we would really, really want to see published. It's keen, it's quite interesting, and that's what makes works like of this nature, and also the fact that it is apt is something that hopefully by the time it gets published, everybody will be able to say, yes, these are the top tips for practice, and these are the findings. So it's very clear. Some of these things we already know, some of them we don't know. Like for me, the backup with face-to-face is something that people need to understand, because everybody's saying, go and do the videos, forget face-to-face or something. But we need to know that it should work in tandem and not in isolation. Mohammed, do you want to ask any questions or? Because thanks, Mohammed, for coming. Mohammed joined from Pakistan, so that's good. So we have a global discussion at the moment. But it's great to have both of you here, Aron and Hannah. I'm pleased to have you here. Like I apologized before, because we could have had more people, but it's great. I will share the videos, and I'm sure people are going to be reaching out to you for this, because this is very fascinating and interesting. And if you can send the slides, that would be great as well, so that I can also circulate it to those that couldn't make it. But on behalf of everyone here, I'd like to thank you, Aron and Hannah. Thanks for coming. Hilary and Mohammed, thanks for joining. And those that joined initially had to go off because of the school brief. We're very grateful, and it was very interesting and fascinating. And I look forward to reading this in the journal. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
guys
having
very
us.
much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks a lot, folks. See
Bye-bye.
you later.
Bye.